Hey, you may know me as an extreme food enthusiast, a chef, even. Some dare say a guru of cuisine. And you wouldn't be wrong. That said, you're probably thinking, why would he, of all people, have anything to do with the subject at hand? Good question. Personally, I don't even know myself. Or I would say that, if it wasn't for the fact that it's not entirely my call. You see, I've been told that I'm not the one to make choices here, and, considering what kind of things I've been desperately trying to hide, and the type of people who now possess knowledge of my misdemeanors, I think this is the smart thing to do. While some may think blackmail, me, I tend to disagree. I would call it fate. Destiny, even. You see, all choices have consequences. And I've been avoiding mine for far too long. It all boils down to the fact that, the thing we call the world, isn't actually all that flexible. Who is born? What sort of events take place? What you eat daily? Those things stay mostly the same, across all possible realities. For a banana to be banana, it first needs the allocations to make it a banana. Do you understand what I'm saying? The world already has those allocations predefined, and as such, cannot function in a way that doesn't match them. It simply isn't possible. That is why most realities are mostly the same. So me being quote-unquote forced to participate in this silly, truly infantile shenanigan, that too is something that happened because of the way the world is set up. Anyhow, let us proceed. I apologize for any nonsensical and incoherent mess that may, and surely will follow. Like I said, it's not entirely my call. Video games. Video games let you do so much, with so little. It's the same with food. Just like food, video games are what I genuinely find fun. And just like worldwide cuisine, the gaming industry too, had at some point, been left belly up, bloated and brimming with maggots, by a bunch of genuinely unpleasant, French people. You can see why this topic is so close to my heart. And no, it's not because I hate the French, although, that in itself, is entirely justifiable. Rather, it's because I hate the status quo. And I hate astroturfing that comes with it. When it becomes mandatory to not deviate, to appeal to the norm. That's where I draw the line. All that to say, despite video games once being something that would get me brimming with enthusiasm and excitement, most stuff that comes out now, I just don't find it fun. I know I'm contradicting myself at this point, but it doesn't matter. It's a complicated topic, and me, I'm a complicated creature. Perhaps, needlessly so. Like I said, not my call.
The Elden Ring. Oh, Elden Ring.
To me, this game is something truly special. It's messy, and, at times, frustratingly so. But, I love it. Objectively speaking, there is a great number of games that do what everyone thinks Elden Ring does, but better. And yet, no matter how many of those games I would try to pile together, they wouldn't reach the same height. Many, does not make one. What's right for most people, doesn't need to be right for me. Some might disagree. And, I don't blame them. You see, our perceptions are totally different, and so are the things we can see. You need other people, to get the full picture. And yet, with Elden Ring, I can't help but think that people either got too excited, or, too distanced to begin with. As for me, I'm glad I was able to find the best path forward, somewhere in between. After all, being able to balance between the extremes, requires experience. Experience which most people lack, or get too overwhelmed with. I guess what I'm trying to get at, is that, despite convincing themselves otherwise, most people don't really know what they want. They merely pretend to. Of course, the best thing to do in such case would be to, well, stop making things be so perfectly level. To stop treating momentary lapses, as something unnatural. In other words, to just chill the fuck out. That is the most rational thing to do, but, as we all know, humans, are anything but. As for the game itself, I could sing praises all day, but right now, I have a far more important topic to touch on. Amidst all the beautiful scenery, engaging battles and boss encounters, and confusing, yet fascinating lore, there is something that stood out to me, elevated my soul, and left me completely flabbergasted, all at the same time. With that said, the sheer lack of discussion and interest regarding this particular subject has left me very, extremely, disappointed. Now, if you're anything like me, You already know what this next topic is about. Snake pussy. An anthropomorphic, snake lady's pussy, to be more specific. Now, I'm not an expert, so I can't help but wonder. What is it like? Is it soft and warm? Or is it ragged and cold like harsh winter snow? Personally, I wouldn't mind either. With that said, I don't think I ever want to find out. However, if, hypothetically speaking of course, it ever came to, I think, I wouldn't mind. And don't get me wrong, it's nothing but pure curiosity. For example, how would it smell like? What would it taste like? Would it be poisonous? Deadly even? Honestly, I would love to know. Yet, at the same time, I don't think I do. These questions, these feelings, they simply don't fit inside a neat little box. And personally, I'm fine with leaving it at that. All in all, Elden Ring is a great game. If nothing else, it's an experience that made me question things I otherwise would never have imagined myself even beginning to contemplate. Furthermore, it also made me reevaluate my certain life choices. Elden Ring is fun, challenging, and surprisingly cautious of its profound aesthetics. While the approach is nothing new per se, it certainly feels fresh, rejuvenating even when you compare it to wallow, rife, and oftentimes borderline pornographic tendencies of other AAA behemoths. While the rest of the industry is evolving backwards and everyone is busy pretending that it's not, the talented from Soft keep treading their own path, with their own, too, bare feet. And that is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all. Now, with that out of the way, I can mention a bunch of other games. Noteworthy games, at that. But, I'm not going to. Why? Well, because I barely even played, let alone finished most of these games. In this day and age, finishing video games has become a truly grueling, incomprehensible task. Instead, I'm going to focus on something else. A personal favorite of mine, you could say. That is, an annual game series, or rather, a unique collection of games, that's been going strong, for quite some time now.
Spectral is open. Play them all.
Now, this year, there's quite a lot of stuff here. I could briefly talk about each entry, but let's not do that. If we did, we would be here all day. Besides, at this point, I can't help but think that my mental capacity is just not up to the task. With that said, I decided to pick out just a few of my personal favorites, and talk about those instead. This game has made me feel completely and utterly terrified. And with me, well, that's not an easy thing to do. In this game, you play as Lyanna, which, based on everything we're told, I can only assume is your average, malformed monstrosity. Why? You see, we can't know for sure. Coming back to our family house after what's only described as a major surgery, the first thing we notice is that all the mirrors have been completely covered. As if to protect ourselves from witnessing our own grotesque reflection. Our mother doesn't appear to know how to deal with us, communicating in a truly bizarre fashion. She feeds us dirt, makes us feel extremely uncomfortable through her behavior, and the whole thing is just something too surreal to truly grasp. All in all, I'd say this game perfectly captures the vibes of an average British household. Like most family-related things, mothered is best experienced at night, lights off, alone, all by yourself. That probably came out wrong, but you get the point. Enigma Studios have yet again delivered a modern classic. I highly recommend you give it a try. And while we're at it, I would also suggest playing their other games after you're finished with this one. Now, I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say that you're not quite ready for the unfold. This game is not for everybody. And this game's title is not something I will ever bother to pronounce. With that said, let's just call it Babbo. Babbo is a work in progress, surreal adventure game made by a Korean game developer Zik. Now, Babbo is pretty good. However, it's as fun and wild as it is silly and utterly incoherent. Personally, I fucking love it. For some, however, Babbo can be a tad too quirky. And I wouldn't blame them, because, well, it is. Or rather, it all comes down to experience. Think of it as food. For example, let's take Korean cuisine, which is rather fitting. It's nice, spicy, hot, and packs quite a punch. Although, if you're not exactly used to it, it will be a painful experience. You see, for something as wild and spicy as this, people have to develop the right type of antibodies first. After all, even the finest nutrition is poisonous, unless you have immunity against it. But, for now, what about the game itself? Despite its narrative being as feral as it is, Babbo provides little in terms of actual gameplay. You walk, talk, interact with your surroundings and that's pretty much it. It's rather simple. Although, simple can go both ways. There's biting through a fresh salad leaf simple. And then, there's simple, in the dull way. Dull. And dry. Now, what about Babbo? Well, how about you give it a try and figure out for yourself. Now, let me start with saying that, generally, I don't like puzzle games. But there's two specific words that come to mind when I try and explain what GOB is. Stripped. Logic. I will explain what I mean. But, a bit later. At its core, GOB is a puzzle game. Made by a developer known as Gamma Girl. This game has played together a beautiful art style, and some banger, avant-garde, hip-hop music. In GOB, you play as DJ GOB, who embarks on his quest to be a top drum and bass producer. Just like any other up-and-coming MC, you begin your journey, in the dark, underground corners, of the city of London. From there, you'll have to rise up to the top, and become a resident of UKF music label, or be completely forgotten. Now, what I like about this game, among other things, are its logic puzzles. They are, to put it bluntly, pretty simple. In GOB, the logic you have to explore is relatively binary, which, in turn, takes away a lot of logical guesswork, and, also, the illogical guesswork. Sure, it makes it simpler, but, at the same time, all the more richer for it. The puzzles you have here, explicitly serve the narrative, and the feel, of what is coming across in the world of GOB. You see, when there's no limit, it simply doesn't make any sense. Of course, you have good games that follow the opposite formula, but you do have an outlier with GOB and its stripped logic. This game is something that a small child could play and not be confused. Now, I think that's pretty good. My point being, when you, as a player, can worry less about what kind of bullshit the game designer thought up about a scene, and more about the actual problem at hand. For a game designer, that's a big win. GOB feels like a children's game, while the reality is that it's clearly not. With that said, if you build a children's world that adults can enjoy, then it's good. But, on the contrary, if you can build a world that's adult, with adult mythology, philosophy, themes, and morality, and make it appeal to children, then it's even better. The game is not out yet, but I have high hopes for it. I'd like to believe that GOB is a game worth giving a damn about. And that is it for this year. If I have skipped over something important, then I do apologize. I am not the man I once was, so I can hardly recollect anything beyond what lies on the surface. I have become weak, fragile, and the burdens are plenty. And yet, I want to keep moving, one little step at a time. You know, cicadas do that too. They dig themselves under the ground, but they come also out, at some point. So then, why shouldn't I? Why should I waste my time alive, laying beneath the soil, when that's all I can do when I am dead anyway? Regardless, this year has been tough. And the next? Well, let's face it, it's not getting any better. With that said, I'm afraid I must go. Thank you for watching and big thanks to Sikander for forcing kindly inviting me, to participate. It was truly, a great honor. Take care, and I'll see you in 10 years.